Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews, where we are talking with folks in our area who are doing extraordinary things, sometimes ordinary people who are out there making the extraordinary happen. And in this case, I think we have an example of that with our two guests. Joining me right now in Studio B for this Adam Interviews segment, we have Susanna Idarola. She is URMC's Strong Center for Development of Disabilities Director, or Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities Director. Susanna, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Very excited to be here.
All right, thank you. And Mary Brustowitz, she is a family navigator for both URMC and Autism Up. So some big roles there in some big organizations. And Mary, we want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So Susanna, we're going to start with you. Your role is a big one. It's a lot of different types of situations that folks find themselves in, families and patients and all that. Autism, of course, a big population in our area. And then the reason that we're talking today, not just to talk about autism, which we are going to in a broad sense, but also one of our former photographers at News 8 called me up. He said he was diagnosed with autism as an adult. He did a series on it in the Boston area and found that there were disparities, that the healthcare wasn't always there, the access points weren't always there in the community in Boston. So I thought, well, what is that like in Rochester right now? So you are at the tip of the spear, so to speak. So what have been your observations in our area?
I'm very glad that we're having this conversation. I think that in clinical and research spheres, we've recognized for a long time that there are some significant equities within the Latino community, but also more broadly within communities of color in terms of timeliness of access, in terms of being able to work with providers who understand their experience, quality of services, and we're excited to kind of shine a light on some of those, as well as the work that we're doing to address those inequities.
And I want to talk about in a minute those changes that are being made and the changes that have been made. Before we do that, Mary, you're on the ground floor. What are you seeing? You speak Spanish. You are right there talking to families. What has been your experience over the last few years?
Well, I think there's, generally we talk about access, right? How do you reach out to the community and let them know that these services are available? What are the steps? We're always looking at the University of Rochester, looking at the website. How can it be, how can it be more accessible so people can understand what those steps are? That can be quite daunting. The University of Rochester has a wonderful team of interpreters who are very helpful. But if you don't know they're there, then you can't access them. So again, that knowledge, getting it out there is one of the most important things.
Yeah, how often do we hear that in the medical community? Just folks knowing that the services are there, to be sure. And Susanna, the changes, I know I've done stories with URMC before and RRH. I don't want to dismiss them, trying to make sure that underserved communities are felt, they feel like they're being reached out to. What's being done within URMC when it comes to this particular issue and this particular population?
I would love to talk about that. And before I do, I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit for what's been going on nationally and locally as well. What I think is important to understand is that, again, this has been a longstanding issue, and there's been a lot of work nationally done to engage and engender more trust with communities that have been traditionally underserved and excluded from our services. And the national network that does monitoring of autism prevalence actually in their most recent report noted a closing of the gap in age of diagnosis and autism prevalence, not only for Latino and Latina children, but also Black African American children and Asian Pacific Islander children as compared to white children. So I think that there have been more coordinated efforts that are resulting in more positive outcomes in that way. And certainly even locally several years ago, we had a wonderful developmental behavioral pediatrician who analyzed our own clinic data here at the University of Rochester Medical Center and found that Latino children and white children in our clinic were receiving a diagnosis at about the same time. So I first want to highlight the progress and then also step back and acknowledge that there's still a lot of work to do, and it's not to say that everything is equitable. So we have ongoing efforts to help address those.
What do those efforts look like?
Sure, I can give a couple of examples. We have a fantastic team that includes some of our self-advocates as well as community organizations that have developed trainings for Spanish language interpreters who are working in medical contexts to kind of better reflect disability language and terminology, but also be aware of disability culture so that the services and the interpretation that they're providing respects Latino culture, but also disability culture as well, because that's a very important identity to a lot of our patients and families. And that was a program that was very well received by many of our medical interpreters, and we're looking for opportunities to get that restarted. So we're very excited about that. And one other example I'll give is kind of aligned with the work that Mary does. We know that within communities that have historically been excluded, that navigator programs, where you have a person from within the community providing resources and information, is more likely to get automatic trust with folks. And you then get to work with someone who really understands your lived experience, as opposed to a provider who's just telling you what to do, but really has no idea what your life is like. So we've promoted those programs both through our clinic and through some of our community organizations. And we've actually trained agencies around New York State on family navigation for families who have a child with a new disability diagnosis, and to receive that information from other parents who understand what they're going through.
Before we go back to Mary, I guess some people might not have a full half hour to watch this, and they're thinking, but how do I get that? Where should they go to look into these resources and their eligibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is a great place to find information. And I'm actually going to say one of the best ways to get information is to call Mary, because she knows everything that's going on, and she can share those. But there are also agencies that are statewide, like Parent to Parent of New York State and the Family Resource Network, who are providing some of these navigation services. And you can Google them and get in touch with them.
Yeah, no, perfect. Excellent. Mary,
hey,
you're the person, huh? So yeah. What is it like? Why don't you walk us through when someone calls, do they set an appointment with you? And what does that first meeting look like?
So usually, so Monday through Friday, I'm at Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics in the Family Library. It's the best spot in the building. People just come in, right? They have an appointment. They have an appointment with a doctor, but they'll just come into the library. Whoever wants to come in, they can come in, drift out. I have a Family Navigator at urmc /rochester.edu, something like that. Yeah. It's just a general email. It will get to me that way. You can call me. Whatever way you want to get in touch with me. I have a lot of families who just drop in. They're having a problem. And they'll come in and they'll say, well, we know that you help us. So we get results. So they'll just drop in and I'll say, what do you need? Right. Yeah. And I always say, look at me, I don't have all the answers, but I know people who do. I'm in a situation, I'm lucky enough that I can triage to get them help. And, as a community, the University of Rochester does have programs with RCSD. We're really reaching out through Autism Up. I run monthly virtual Spanish support groups. We have them in person like a few times a year, maybe 5 or 6 times a year. They're very well attended. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. I have to figure out where to hold them now because they are getting so big, which is a great problem to have, right? It's not a problem. It's just logistics. Yeah. We also do trainings for like what is autism, things that might just be helpful for parents. We also have a parent effectiveness program at Autism Up that I think is wonderful, which helps parents learn how to be, exactly as the title says, more effective, right? How do you work with children who have difficulty transitioning from one activity to another? How do you, what do you do when they're in crisis mode? What can you do? And then also the last component of that is how can you help yourself as a parent? And that goes across, that's not just for Latinos, that's for any parent, but we do have these programs in Spanish, which I think are helpful.
It's nice to know that you're thinking of the parents too, because what a spot to be in. And as Susanna pointed out, the healthcare system, URMC, I'm guessing RRH as well, but URMC, you're trying to tailor this to the culture at hand. When it comes to the Latino culture, what does that look like? What's different, if anything? Besides the language, of course, which is a huge, obstacle in certain respects.
Well, it is an obstacle. The language, clearly is. Culturally, and look at my last name. I'm not Latina. I'm not Hispanic. I'm married to a Spaniard. I've lived in Spain. I worked in Spain for, I don't know. I worked there for 10 years, and my husband, we speak Spanish at home. We don't speak English at home. So I think culturally, I think it depends. Each family is their universe.
That's
right?
true.
I work with families from all over, and when they walk through the door, it's, again, what do you need? And it does differ. Just as in families who are not Latino, right, you have where are they coming from? What are their particular needs? Is it a rural family? A rural-based family is going to have different needs than a city-based family. What are the supports in that area? It can be really challenging, especially in some counties where there are fewer supports. And I have also found that there is a lot of grace within that community, because people will say, and you joke, I hate to say this, but I think there's a better sense of humor. There's more of humor and grace. It's not an Anglo-Saxon culture. So there's this grace. And so we joke about words that are different, right? If I go to England, they're going to have a different vocabulary than we have here in the United States and they have in Australia. It's all English, right? But there's a different culture around certain things. With the Latino culture also, they come to me, they think I'm more of a neutral because I'm not, right? I'm not part of the community, but I adore it, and I adore learning more, and I help, right? So I think like I said, there's a grace, and we're able to laugh about things that are different, right? Like, you're from Chile. Oh, okay. So how do you say this here, right?
Yeah, make a connection there.
And there are nuances, and there is that willingness to give the grace to learn. I have found it to be very kind and helpful, and very warm. When we have our get-togethers at Autism Up, they're so much fun that you leave there and you don't really want them to stop.
Yeah.
So,
well, they're very lucky to have you in that community, I can already tell. And Susanna, Mary had mentioned reaching out to kids, and I think you had mentioned that one of the goals is to make sure that there is contact and help given, at the same age, that there isn't an age discrepancy in when kids are getting this. Because from my very layman's understanding, the earlier you can start services, the better when it comes to autism. Is that still true? Am I hearing that correctly from the little that I read about this?
Yes, absolutely. So I want to qualify that. So yes, as with any kid, intervention earlier, supports earlier, systemic wraparound services earlier, it's traditionally going to lead to better outcomes. Absolutely. I also want to highlight that it's never too late to get access to services. And I think that's really important when we're talking about communities where, quite frankly, our systems have been partially responsible, if not fully responsible, for their diagnoses coming later or not having full access to quality care early in life. And so I don't want to be sending the message that it's not worthwhile to continue to seek services, to fight for services, to reach out to get support from us in terms of getting those services, because it's always going to be helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then what do those services look like? So for parents who are thinking, I'm going to go in, what does the intervention look like to make sure that there's behavioral, intellectual growth beyond what would be possible if there were no intervention?
There is such a vast variety of supports and services that are very highly customized to each individual child, because the needs are going to be so different, and every child's strengths that they're bringing are going to be really different. And to Mary's point earlier, I also think it's really important to consider what the family's values are and the person's values are when putting together a customized program. So it can span anything from school-based supports around academics and cognitive development. It can include, specialized services like speech pathology services, occupational therapy for fine motor skills, physical therapy for large body movements, social supports to make sure that kids feel included and are a part of their community and feel a sense of belonging, and that they can access the parts of the community that they want to be a part of is also important. And then there might be associated medical services that are needed for co-occurring conditions, support around sleep, audiology, GI issues, right? So it really is so highly specific, and it's important then that families are able to understand the full range that is available for their children, and that they are an important driver of helping to put together the team that works with their kids and the plan that aligns with what we know to work and what's important to them.
Yeah, the whole team aspect. I think that's an important note there. And Mary, when you talk about the involvement of parents, before they reach out to you, they have to notice that there's an issue. So I apologize if I'm asking this incorrectly, but are there signs, like what can they notice as parents that they say something is different here and I might need to reach out?
Usually the parent knows something is different. Usually it could be, a delay in language, a delay in speaking. That's usually, I think, wouldn't you say, Susanna, that was probably the primary thing. People are like, oh, he's not speaking yet. Mm-hmm. And so that would prompt it. Also, this behaviors that don't seem like, if they have another child, that don't seem like the other child. I had a mom who was telling me, I have my little boy just likes to sit under the table, right? That's his favorite place. He doesn't want to interact. So it's that social interaction, it's language, if they're speaking or not, have that expressive verbal language, and maybe that sensory thing. Are they doing things that don't seem like other children are doing, like looking for dark places to sit. And so I think those are I think the big three type of areas: the social, the sensory, and then the language, right?
Yeah. No, it's funny. I had the great privilege. A friend of mine, his son is, in seventh grade or something like that, and they got assigned a young adult book called "The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime," and he loved it. He ended up reading with his son, and he loved it so much. He goes, "You have to read this," and I can't believe it's just for young adults, because to me, it opened my eyes. Now, this was, you talk about autism being on a spectrum. There was, some serious behavior issues that they had to address, and communication issues, things like that. But at the same time, it opened my eyes to how some on that spectrum view the world, and it really emphasized their humanity. Not that I ever questioned it, but they may just think differently in certain aspects, be overwhelmed by stimuli, and so I think something like that could breed compassion in the community. Just so anyone out there, if you do want to read, especially if you have kids, I don't know if either of you had a chance to read that or know of the book, but. I don't know your thoughts on that type of outreach to kids who do not have autism or not on the spectrum. That's part of the work as well, whether it's in the Latino community or not. Susanna, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it's nice to see media that is acknowledging the range of how symptoms of autism can show up and how different people walk through the world. So I think it's a very positive thing that we have a variety of representations of autism and what it is and what it isn't in publicly available media. I will also say that all of us experience the world in different ways. And the best way to learn about people is through other people. And so above and beyond kind of what you consume, I would say relationships and getting to know people who are autistic or identify as being on the spectrum or neurodivergent in a different way, and connecting with communities intentionally is the best way to get to know people with autism, because you're actually talking to autistic people.
I couldn't agree more. And by the way, I mean, my experience is a lot of them focus their immense intelligence in one area, and the stuff you can learn from them, especially I find that those I've met have gravitated towards science and math, and the stuff they know is just truly encyclopedic. It's been a wonderful experience for me. And when you deal with that, Mary, do you try and foster that? Do you try and acknowledge that as like a highlight in their life and their family's life? How does that work?
Well, that's one of the best things about being a family navigator, right? Is I get to meet all these families and these amazing children. And it's a spectrum. So, you might have a child who has this incredible, intense knowledge about aviation, planets or something. And those aren't my skill set. So I'm very, very interested to learn more. And then, children who are struggling, but they still love what they love. And it is great to be able to encourage them to learn about more what they love. I'm thinking, I had a little boy in today who was fascinated. I have a maze ball, one of those things that I don't know what they're called, but it's a cool. And he was so intrigued with this, and I said, "Oh, just take it back to your appointment and bring it back later. Just drop it off." But then while he was away, I was like, "I think I have something else in here that's like this in the library." And so I was able to give him a little version of a maze. It wasn't perfect, but you want to encourage whatever you foster, and you're also talking to someone who fosters reading. I think I've given out 75 books this month.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a book pusher, so I encourage parents to read to their children. It's so important. So I think, and especially when there is a special interest. Again, I like dinosaurs. I have a nice dinosaur collection in the library.
I bet.
Right? And they get a lot of use. And then when I see, every once in a while, I'll say, "Okay, why don't you just take that book home?"
Yeah.
Right? Because that's how we learn. And I know there's one thing that I think Temple Grandin said, what I really like is, if it weren't for people who thought differently, we'd still be sitting around in a circle without fire.
I can't believe you mentioned Temple. So I worked in Fort Collins, Colorado for 4 years, and that's where Temple is based off of. She works with cattle there, which is, she helped to create the form of, how we get our meat in a much more humane way. And I won't get into the details of it, but Temple, I've interviewed her a few times, and she is absolutely wonderful. And again, you look for experiences that open your eyes to the spectrum and how people think, and truly incredible. I'm so glad. I haven't thought about her in a while. I'm very grateful that you brought her name up.
Well,
so.
I just love that, because it is true. I mean, if we all thought the same, I'm listening to Susanna, I'm like, boy, she's so good at speaking. But this is what she does. You're super knowledgeable about. You're a doctor of this, right? But it's exciting.
Yeah,
it's exciting, and but our differences are what make us stronger together, right?
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Of course, please.
Mary, I agree with you. It's so exciting when people can share their interests and their passion with you. And for people who use vocal language, it's easy to do that because it's a way that's understandable to all of us. I want to add to that by also saying that there are a lot of people, autistic people and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, who have a lot to give and a lot to share, who might not use spoken language to share those things. So also being aware that there are a lot of worthwhile relationships that can happen, and worthwhile communication that can happen that doesn't always involve language that you can hear.
I think that's a fantastic point. And then also physical contact as well. That book I just mentioned, The Curious Case of the Dog in the Nighttime, instead of a hug, the family would put up, I'll just do this so that people can see it. They would put up their hand like this, and the child would do the fingers. And that was an expression of love, and why that's just the same as anything else. And I also want to give credit to URMC here as well. I spoke with Dr. David Greenberg, who's going to be coming in, I think, in January as a professor, coming in from Cambridge, going to be with the Eastman School of Music, and he's going to work hand in hand with URMC to develop different programs and treatments that apply music to people with autism, and not just regular songs, but also tones and things like that. So I think this is cutting edge stuff. You talk about access and treatment. This is it's pretty interesting to see, Susanna. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
No, I will say that kind of this idea of sensory processing and music as a form of understanding sensory processing is not my area of expertise. I have a lot of colleagues who have deep expertise here, but I do think that kind of overt and then kind of non-measurable, not non-measurable, but processing that falls below observation in our field of awareness and requires things like eye tracking devices and MRIs and EEGs and stuff to identify are a source of better understanding how people experience the world, and especially how they experience things that might affect their ability to get along in day-to-day life. How do they experience language? How do they experience sensory information? How do they experience music? And how can our understanding of those processes lead to a better understanding of their overall experience, which could help to inform ways to support them, or it might just contribute to broader awareness and understanding of the diverse ways that people move through life.
And I think you get to my kind of last point that I like to touch on here is a lot of different diseases, conditions, there's a stigma attached to it. Autism being one of them, maybe one of the top ones that I've seen, again, from my layman's perspective. And so when we talk about reaching out to various communities, it's not just the families who are affected directly by autism or the patients, but also the community at large. And Susanna, I know you kind of already touched on that already, but Mary, I'd love to get your perspective on that as well.
Well, it's hard. Parents always feel judged, right? No one wants to be. So I think, I don't know if I'm driving this in the right way, but when your child is having a hard time and you're out in public, you might feel like a deer in the headlights. What are you going to do? You feel you have to do something. It's uncomfortable. If this isn't your culture, it's worse, right? Because you feel more vulnerable, right? So I always, I have little cards that I give to parents. My child has autism.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect. They're highly imperfect, but it's a way to stop. It's a way to empower the parents to do something. Because I also encourage them when their child, if they are having a crisis or a meltdown in public, when you have to keep them safe, you have to keep yourself safe top.
Yeah.
But then, if that anxiety in you is boiling up, hand out a card. And then it's on that person.
Yeah.
It's on that person why is this person handing me a card?
Right.
Are they, do they want me to call them? No, we want you to learn a little bit more about what is happening. Like you, Susanna, you had mentioned, and Adam, you did too, the different, having autism out on TV shows, in movies, right? In the spectrum of it,
right.
The Good Doctor, and then people, Rain Man, different.
Good point.
Different support needs, right? It's a way of building compassion, right? Oh yeah, I know someone like that. Yeah, and they're really nice. I used to play in the sandbox with them all the time, and it was great fun. But if you're not exposed, if you're not welcoming people, then you're not learning.
Yeah. Well, look, you're empowering the community by doing that, and the program as a whole, and through your center. And so I can't thank you enough for the work that you are doing in the community, making a difference. And I also want to thank you for your time and coming in and sharing your perspective today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right, Susanna. Mary, thank you so much. We are going to continue these conversations as we move forward with the Adam Interviews program, which is a nice reminder to tell your friends and family to go get the Adam Interviews app if they don't have it already, so they can be part of the community and the understanding that comes with it to help folks out. And you know what? You benefit as well. So thank you so much, and I will see you all soon. Take care.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.